guys, thank you so much for joining me on day 9 of our Disney Nail Art Challenge. Today we are moving on to The Lion King, which is one of my absolute favourite movies, and I absolutely adored the remake. What did you guys think of the remake? So we have 9 characters from The Lion King that we are going to be working on. So we are going to be doing The Lion King for the next 9 days. So we have 2 different types of Simba. So we're going to do Simba when he's little and then Simba when he's big, but like a silhouette of Simba when he's big. We're also going to do Nala, we're going to do Timon and Pumbaa, we're going to do Mufasa and Scar, and we are going to do Zazu and Rafiki. Now guys, these ones are a little bit more difficult, so if you want the step-by-step pictures, don't forget to join the Facebook group. The link is in the description below. I've also popped some product links in the description for the products that I use throughout the training. So I have links there for the paints that I use, for the paintbrushes that I recommend, and also for the nail tips that I use if you guys want to practice on those tips. So guys, I hope you're ready for a challenge. These are a good bit more difficult than the Mickey and Minnie and Mouse and Friends, but they are totally worth it. My clients absolutely love their Lion King nails. Right, so we're going to start off by mixing up the colour for Simba. So we're going to start off with some yellow and some red. Now before we start this, I want to point out that sometimes mixing paint goes really well and it's really quick. And then other times it's a pain in the ass and everything that could possibly go wrong goes wrong. This was one of those times. So once you've got your yellow and your red mixed together, we're going to add in a little bit of brown. Now I actually use the Winsor & Newton paint for this, and I have popped a link in the description below just for the brown paint that I used. So then you want to add a little bit of white and give that a good mix up. And as you can see, I made it way too white when I did that because I put a massive blob of white in. So I'm going to add a little bit more yellow in there. It doesn't really help that Simba is a weird orangey brown colour. And I'm going to start testing it then on the back of my hand to check out the colour. Now that's way too pale. So I'm going to add in a little bit more red. Now when you're adding red, you want to add a little bit at a time because a little bit of red goes a long way. And I'm going to test that again on the back of my hand. Now I'm still not happy with that colour, so I'm going to add a little bit more brown. This is where it starts to kill my soul. So now every time you add a colour, you are going to test it on the back of your hand and see if you're happy. So I've added a little bit more red. And I'm going to test it. And I really wasn't careful that time and added a little bit too much red. So I'm going to add a little bit more yellow just to tone it down a bit. You can see I threatened to add a little bit more red there and then thought better of it. And then finally, we are happy. And I'm going to mix my water in, and we're done. So we're going to start painting Simba's head. You want to start off with a little curved diagonal line around the centre of the nail, probably a little bit higher than the centre. We want to keep it on a curve because the top of his head is curved. And then you want to paint 2 big round ears on either side. Now if either of your ears disappear off the side of the nail, that's totally fine. So his head's going to be at a bit of a diagonal. He's cheeky, so we want to give him a cheeky head tilt. And then you want to curve the left cheek down and around. Towards the opposite side of the nail. And then you're going to drag his right hand cheek off the nail in this instance. But if your head's a little bit smaller, you're going to follow the same shape as the left hand side. And you want to finish off his little chin. and you're going to fill that in. And you need to make sure you let that dry. But while it's drying, we're going to give him 4 little hairs on the top of his head. Now these are kind of like our eyelashes from our Mickey and Minnie Mouse. They're literally just curved lines. That's our first one going in. Right down onto his little head. Right in the middle of his forehead. Colour completely dry, and then you can add your second layer of colour if you can see through Simba anywhere. Once that layer is dry, we're going to do a little bit of shading on Simba's face. And in order to do that, we do need to have a slightly redder orange. So I've just added a little bit of red to the top corner of his skin colour, or his fur colour. And we're going to work with that. So using our darker shade of orange, we're going to do 2 big round eyes. We're just going to shade them in. And you want them to be nice and round. So more roundy than our usual egg shapes. And nice and big as well. So this is going to be the shading that's around his actual eyes themselves. So you do want these to be nice and big. So once you have them in, we want to mix up a pink for his nose. So we're going to add in a little bit of red and a little bit of white. And give them a good mix together, and then add your water in. And in between his 2 eyes, we're going to give him a little upside down triangle that has nice soft round edges. Right in the centre of his 2 eyes. For his mouth area, we need a really light shade of brown, but we want to use the same shade of brown that we use for his face. So we're going to mix a little bit of white in, And we're going to give that a good mix together, because that way it'll blend really nicely because the original colour is underneath. So a little area that's lighter. And this is going to be for his mouth and around his mouth area. So start with outlining around the bottom of his nose. And then on the left hand side, we're going to give him two outward curves. So kind of like two left hand brackets. One on top of the other, just to show off the curve of his mouth. And you want this one to lead right off the bottom of the nail, or the kind of side of the nail where his face ends. And then on the other side, we're going to do two inward curves. So essentially the same bracket, but now it looks like an innie curve rather than an outie curve. And you're going to fill that in. Then we want to give him yellow eyes. So we're going to pop a little bit of yellow down. And just because my yellow is a little bit see-through, I like to add a little bit of white to it just to make it more opaque. And then I can add my water. And then inside the two slightly more orange circles that we drew earlier on, we are going to paint our two very famous eggs for his eyes. You don't want either of these to touch off his nose, because his pink nose does stick out further than his eyes because he is a lion. Once you have his eyes in then, we are going to take our dark shade of brown and we're going to start to outline his ears. So I got a little bit of red in here earlier on, so I'm just mixing that through, which will add a little bit of depth to the colour. So if you want to add a bit of red in, you can. And we're going to start by outlining the ear on the right hand side. So you are literally just following your outline. You're going to wrap all the way around the ear and you're going to tuck into the cheek. And then we're going to do the ear on the other side. Now this side we have pulled into the ear very slightly near the top at the same angle as the ear itself, just to outline that the inside of the ear is slightly darker than the outside of the ear. See what I mean? We then need a lighter shade of brown for the inside of his ears. So we're going to add a little bit of white into the brown that we already have there. And give it a good mix through. So this brown is going to be used for the inside part of his ear. So we're going to curve it from the top of the darker line that we painted, right around and in towards the ear, and then back out and meet the line at the bottom. And then you're going to fill that in. You want to be careful that you don't overlap the darker line that you already painted, but if you do, you can go back over it. And then you're going to do the same thing on the other ear. You can see a little bit more of this ear, so don't worry if this one looks a little bit bigger, it should. And you're going to fill that one in too. Once you've got this ear finished, we're going to add a little bit of black to the palette, and we're going to start to outline the top of his head. Just the top of his head for now, because the top of his head is actually finished, and I don't want to lean on any of the rest of my character when I'm outlining the top of his head later on. So we're going to start over at the edge of one of the little hairs on the top of his head, outline down towards the ear, and then you're going to outline the rest of the hairs. Literally following what you have painted already. And yes, I know, I hold my paintbrush really weirdly. I also hold a pen the exact same way. Once you've got his hair painted in, you can add the curve for the top of his head, which is going to dip down into the top of his ear and towards the brown lines that you've painted. Now it's not going to touch off the dark brown, but it is going to dip down his forehead towards them. Then you can wrap your outline down around the ear . On both sides. We are going to move on to his little eyeballs. So because he's cheeky and mischievous, we're going to have him looking over to the side with nice big round pupils. And once you're happy with his pupils, we're going to give him super cheeky eyebrows. So we want one eyebrow to be raised. So we want the eyebrow to curve in a little bit and then up and around his eye. Nice and big. And the other eyebrow we're going to have curling down towards the top of his eye and then up at a diagonal and a little bit more of a curve at the end. So he's like, what's going on over there? How cute are his eyebrows? So we're going to keep with our black then, and we're going to start the rest of his outline. So we're going to outline around his ears. And we're going to add an outline to the dark brown of his ear as well. Now this line is going to go right down the side of his cheek and off the nail. And then you can start to outline his eyes. So you're going to wrap up and around and make sure they look nice and round. Then we're going to take the light shade that we used for his mouth area and we're going to give him little curved lines underneath his eyes just to highlight them. And then mixing a little bit more white into the lighter shade of brown that we used for the ears, we're going to do a little bit of outlining on his face with a brown rather than black this time, just so it's not quite as severe. So you're going to start his nose outline on the left hand eye, touching off the eye slightly, and you're going to wrap it down and around his nose. And then on the other side, you're going to come in at a little bit of a diagonal from the left and wrap down and around his nose again. You're then going to finish outlining his nose with the brown. we're going to show off 3 cute little hairs on his forehead, pointing down towards his eyes and pointing down towards his left eye. And we're going to give him 2 cheeky little frown lines just above his nose. And I'm just going to touch up the outline around his eye very slightly. And then we're going to finish outlining the left-hand side of his face. So we're going to finish outlining his ear. And then on the inside of his ear, we're going to outline down the side of his face and off the bottom of his nail. Then we're going to take the light brown that we used for his outline again, and we're going to give him 2 little round nostrils in the bottom of his nose. Then we're going to quickly jump back to black, and we're going to give him his little mischievous half a smile. So a little line down from the middle of his nose, curve the round, and not like up as high as we would have brought Mickey and Minnie's smile, but like kind of a slightly upwards line, so that it's like a I know you're doing something. I want to know what it is that you're doing. But I also don't want you to know that I know what you're doing. One of those kind of smiles. That's the kind of smile we're going for here. And we're going to add a little bit of pink in, just to show off that his mouth is open in a ooh kind of shape. And then you're going to take black and outline his little ooh face. So then you're going to take your lighter shade of brown again that you were using for outlining. And we're going to give him 3 little whiskers on either side of his face. And then you're going to take the colour that we used for around his mouth, and you're going to do a few little flicks underneath his whiskers, just to show off that he is fluffy. So you're dragging that over the outline and over the orange underneath. And you're going to do the same thing then with his orange skin colour. You're going to do a few little flicks over the outline and over the ear area. Now, just to make him a little bit more mischievous, I'm going to give him red pupils. So inside the black pupils that we painted earlier on, we're going to do little red rings. Kind of like a C. So there's like black and then there's red and then there's a bit of black again. And then once that's dry, we're going to take a little smidge of white and we're going to give him a little tiny highlight inside each of the inner black bits of his eyes. So where we went like black on the outside, then red, then black, it's the last black bit that we're doing a little tiny highlight inside. And then that's it, guys, he is done. So you need to wait for him to dry and then you can top coat him and cure him. So this is what he looks like when he's top coated. The nails all shiny, all the brush strokes are gone. He is so cute. Your clients will absolutely love him. And here is a sneak peek of him beside Nala, who we are going to do tomorrow. So guys, thank you so much for joining me on day 9 where we have just finished Simba. Tomorrow we are going to be doing the super cute Nala. If you guys haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please hit that subscribe button. It should be on your screen right now for you. And I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye!